That is for sure still the case. We indicated in our interest rate path that we published that it's a fairly high likelihood. It's not a given, but it's like a fairly high likelihood for an additional rate hike when we meet in November, when we will, of course, evaluate the latest number when it comes to inflation and the overall economic activity.
Yeah, one of the questions that we've been putting to the central bank governors this week is how you're thinking about the recent increase in the price of oil. We had a bit of a shock, obviously, in the price of oil after the horrific events of the weekend that are still unfolding in the region. They've come down somewhat, but still the trajectory has been upwards for the most part the last couple of months. Are you willing to look through those shocks, or are you being cautious?
No, I think we should be cautious. We looked through kind of increase in oil prices, energy prices 1.5 years ago. That turned out to be wrong, so I think for sure we need to be more cautious. Having said that, oil price increase is not a major thing for the Swedish economy. The thing that hit us a year ago was electricity prices driven by higher gas prices. So they have been very contained now. So actually, if you look on the 12-month number on energy prices in the CPI, they are on substantial minus numbers. We actually falling prices compared to a year ago. But for sure, we should not be complacent. We should look up for the risks.
Yeah, I find it interesting because I feel like there has been an evolution in central bank governors' thinking over the last couple of years, and I speak to many of them. And you know, a couple of years ago, when you get a supply shock, the traditional response would be, we're going to look through it because it is a supply shock transitory in nature. And of course, that didn't really transpire the last couple of years. Do you think there's a risk now that perhaps you guys have swung too much the other way and that you're being almost too reactive to supply shocks?
No, of course we should be balanced here, and I think if we get a kind of downward, even more pronounced downward trend in underlying inflation, in service prices, then of course you could ease up a little bit. But I think it's a reminder that things vary a lot. We don't know either how much the Krone effect actually affected the inflation process. So we got the supply shock and an extra boost to demand after the Corona kind of ended, and exactly how to value that, I think, is hard.
I guess you must have been disappointed that there wasn't more of a bid for Corona after your most recent decision. Talk me through your hedging strategy and the recent announcements you've made on currency hedging.
So basically the Corona is a big problem for inflation in Sweden, but it's also actually the irony here is that we earned a lot of money from the weakening of the krona because we have foreign exchange reserve of equivalent 40 billion euros. So basically, we have earned a lot of money there. We say, well, let's hedge a quarter of that, 25%. So when the krona will strengthen, which we are confident it will do, then the kind of loss in that will be less. So we basically, from a risk management perspective, are hedging a quarter of our FX risk.
Do you feel that perhaps with other central banks approaching the end of their own hiking cycle, ECB, the Fed, possibly right at the end now, that will ultimately lead to some positive tailwinds for the currency?
No, I think so, and especially I think the dollar is always extremely important for all currencies. Of course, if the dollar kind of appreciation trend would turn, that would be helpful for the currency. But we also showed in our latest report that to understand what's actually driving the currency is extremely hard. So we know that it fluctuates. It's fluctuating in the negative side now. It will turn back eventually, but it's very, very hard to pick exactly the reason for it.
Yeah.